Coming up with the NBA season starting in about 2 hours with the Nets and Bucks from Milwaukee. We will talk to Raptors president Masai Ujiri, but the second segment on a Tuesday can mean one of only two things. One, I finally thread the needle live on national television. Or two, the virtual roundtable has been assembled. Thank God, Yahweh, Allah, et al. It is the latter. Otherwise, we all might have seen my groin tear together. As per usual, we have combed the continent far and wide to gather the round table, and with the basketball season set to begin, fittingly, with the defending champs hosting another team in turmoil. No, not the Philadelphia 76ers, but the Brooklyn Nets. No turmoil in the three joining me for a little basketball talk, just pure, unadulterated basketball minds. Joining me first in studio, he cut his teeth at the Score, Dime, Vice, a bunch of other things, took Raptors Republic to a new level. I think even ripping me a couple of times along the way. On the way to the Athletic, now the morning show host in Toronto on Sportsnet 590 fan, ladies and gentlemen.
I would never rip you.
No?
Absolutely not. I'm sure, look, Raptors Republic, I'm sure Sid got it a couple times, but no, you're sainted. You're good.
I actually just noticed Sid getting it a lot right now when he suggested that Pascal Siakam be traded for Ben Simmons.
Saw that on my way in as well.
I might be getting a little bit of that same thing right now. Joining us from down the road, noted author, columnist, multimedia star here at Sportsnet, and the only one among us who averaged 11.5 points per game at Mount Allison University. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Michael Graves. What's up, Mike?
Good to see you guys. You know, as I said, I got the flannel. We're not in Tampa anymore, people.
Nice.
We're back.
We're back in Canada, officially represented by flannel. And finally, joining us from across the street at Staples Center, which is not only a fancier location than any of us, but he is across the border that we still can't drive through. If you follow him on MC10 on Twitter, at MC10. Got it good and since you understood. There are no borders. From ESPN, it's Dave McMenamin. Thanks for doing this, Dave.
Absolutely glad to be here with all you. And Michael, we got to get you some AirPods, my man. Cords are out.
I just lose them. I mean, you have to get me like 50 pairs.
Yeah.
We'll start with the one pair.
I've been with left and right, right and left, and I'm currently without both as we speak. We're going to get to the Raptors, but opening night in the NBA, and Ben Simmons is dominating the news cycle like he would the game if he ever got a jump shot. Let's start with Dave. What the hell do you make of this telenovela that is the Philadelphia 76ers?
I feel like it was a miscalculation on the behalf of Ben Simmons. If he was not going to play for the Sixers this year and sacrifice the financial ramifications that came with that, which included 25% of his salary that was already due to him, up to $320,000 per preseason game that he missed, then just do it. Because now he has given up his leverage by reporting back to the team, and it hasn't changed their thinking, hasn't changed their urgency in order to find a trade for something that might not materialize till mid-December after contracts that have already been signed this past offseason can be allowed to be traded. And so right now he's just tarnishing his reputation. He's not helping his current team. He's not helping another team that's out there get enticed to drop everything right when the season is beginning to go trade for a discontent. And it's a tough situation. I think he is the one who's hurting himself right now.
Blake, I know you walked in here saying Shams just dropped a couple of bombs here on the internet. I don't know if you leafed through them enough in time to tell. Yeah, what's going on here?
Apparently he's not even saying hi to the security guy. Like, he's walking in the building and the security guy's like, "Hey, Ben," and he's just head down and goes through, and like he's only communicating with the coaches from the Delaware G League team and not the Philadelphia team directly. It sounds like a lot, and to Dave's point, you kind of give up your leverage by showing up. And if you're going to show up, the whole point is to not mess up your money. If you're not going to participate in practice and you leave room for them to fine you and suspend you, there's no point in you being there.
He's already cost himself, and this is a report, about $1.4 million, and then he gets suspended for the first game, so he can add another couple $100,000 on top. Mike, how do you see this ending up? Is there any way out other than a trade? And both parties are being hurt by this right now because the Sixers are losing any sort of leverage or like not getting pennies on the dollar in this. Like, I don't know how this ends or ends quickly.
Well, the only trade that's going to be out there is for damaged goods, right? Like, who in your right mind, if you're either an organization or fan base for the ability that Ben Simmons does have and has shown at points in his career, you're not trading for a guy like this if you've got plans to win. And that's been the missing formula with Ben Simmons. That's been his rep, that going right back to his time at LSU. And if you read some of the draft prognosticators, some of the very good ones at Draft Express back in the day, that was his rep even when he was with Australia and youth national teams. So this is just kind of like the worst case scenario for all involved. But if you're a general manager right now and you're trying to convince your owner that you need to trade for Ben Simmons and the remaining millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on his contract, which owner is going to say yes? Which fan base is going to embrace him? So the short answer is I don't see how this gets resolved. It just looks like a stalemate that can't be resolved. I mean, we've been proven wrong over and over again in the NBA in situations like this, but I don't know if we've seen a situation exactly like this.
I'm going to ask Dave this because you were talking about how much culpability is on Ben Simmons' lap, and I get it. I said it before the break. I think that he deserves a lot of heat. But don't the Sixers organization or franchise deserve some heat? I mean, his teammate, the leader of the team, Joel Embiid, threw him under the bus at the end of last year. The head coach, Doc Rivers, threw him under the bus at the end of last year. And let's be honest, Philadelphia hasn't exactly been a pitcher. The process has been absolutely terrible, and Embiid's been part of that. And I feel like what they're doing right now is saying, there's our scapegoat right there. And I kind of sort of get it, but there has to be some culpability on the Sixers, doesn't there?
Yeah, Tim, the Sixers have now compromised their season by allowing this to drag out to this point. Now, Daryl Morey, I believe, would tell anyone willing to listen that this is a long-term play. There's 4 years left on Ben Simmons' contract. We are not going to allow a month of awkwardness affect our long-term decision-making because whoever or whatever package we do eventually move Simmons for, it's going to have to be something that we can ride out over the next several years. And so it's a tough calculation, but Daryl Morey is a shrewd businessman, someone who does not approach the job the way many in this league do. It comes down for him a lot of times less emotion involved and more asset-driven decision-making. And because of that, you have players like Joel Embiid and the other forward-facing members of the organization left to bear the brunt. Now, one thing I will point out and kind of argue on Michael's point, like it wouldn't necessarily be damaged goods they would get in return, but it would be young draft picks, assets of that nature, and that doesn't fit with their current core because they are paying Joel Embiid and Danny Green and Tobias Harris win-now type of money, and that will not mesh with a bunch of draft picks.
Blake, where do you see them in the East?
I mean, if Ben Simmons is there, I think they're a top 4 team in the East. If Ben Simmons is going to continue this on and he doesn't end up playing for them and they don't get something back that can fit in the rotation, it's a little dicier. The East is pretty competitive. I think the Hawks are maybe ready to take a little bit of a step forward again this year. So I think they're at risk of falling into that kind of 5 to 7 range. I do think the team around Joel Embiid and with Embiid playing at a close to MVP level, this is still a really dangerous team. But it's the lineups with Simmons and Embiid the last few years that have been so dominant. Last year, they were the very best 5-man unit in the entire NBA in the regular season. It's not, there are some on-court questions, but they're really good because Simmons and Embiid are really good and they can figure it out together game to game. So I think, they're never going to be bad with Embiid healthy, but their upside has dropped dramatically without Simmons.
Let's get to the Raptors because I feel like, Mike, there's this glut of good in the East, and there's not a lot of great, and there's not a lot of terrible. Where do the Raptors fit into that mix?
I think they're kind of almost emblematic of the East. I mean, as a team, I don't think they have a tremendous ceiling, but I think they have a pretty decent floor. I don't think that they can be. Almost to their detriment, I don't think they can be a really bad team in the East right now. So I think, they're a team that's probably got a very realistic shot at a spot in the play-in tournament, that 7 to 10 range. I'd be shocked if they're not in there. I think if things break their way, they can kind of sneak into the, kind of knock on the door for the 5-6 spot. But I'm almost wondering if if that's the right strategy, right? I mean, this is a team that probably still needs to refresh itself a little bit. And, maybe they end up undone by their own competence a little bit. But I think they're going to be, they got a clear style of play. They've got a clear mission in how they want to do it. And maybe I think the personnel to play that way. But where is that going to end them up? I think it's probably going to end up in the bottom half of the middle. How does that sound? That makes sense? The middle half of the bottom? Something like that.
McMenamin, how about this? Let's simplify. Do you see them as a playoff team? And listen, you don't have to pander to this Canadian audience. We need you to be honest with us.
I mean, they're on the cusp, and it's going to really come down to guys like OG Anunoby making a leap and not proving it was a flash in the pan what he showed in the preseason. Certainly, he grabbed the league's attention with his performance there. And Scotty Barnes, how quickly can he turn that tremendous body, a guy who looks like he was created in a lab to play NBA basketball, and translate it into consistent type of performances they're going to need to win high-level games. They lost their heart, their soul, their person who organizes them on both ends of the court. In Kyle Lowry, you can't underestimate, or overestimate, I should say, how big of a deal that is. But there are still pieces in Pascal Siakam and obviously Fred VanVleet who have won in this city and have the trust with Nick Nurse in terms of they will start creating the program all over again. But that takes time. And that's why, we talk about the East. Yes, they're top heavy with Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And from there's a lot of teams just trying to find where they stand. But I don't know where Toronto stands in that whole mix.
All right, Blake, how do the Raptors shock people? Like, what's the scenario where you see them taking an unforeseen step? Because I think all of us think they're around the same spot.
Yeah, and I think I have them in that same spot too, but I think you can piece together a lot of little games, like Dave said. OG Anunoby takes that jump that Raptors fans are so excited about, and he gets to being a 20-point-a-game guy without losing that efficiency. Siakam comes back and is healthy out of the gate. Scotty Barnes is, I don't think there are as many questions about his defense in the near term, but is he ready to contribute in a half-court offense? So I think you look at this team, they're going to be a top 10 defense, maybe even higher. They're going to lead the league in forced turnovers and be a top 3 to 5 transition offense, but they need guys to take steps when it comes to scoring in the half-court. Tight game, late in the game against a good defensive team, that's where the Raptors are really going to struggle, and that's where you either need Siakam to come back and look like pre-bubble Siakam did, or you need so many guys that take little steps that you're just really difficult to defend because there's 5 guys who can dribble and pass and score a little bit. You're just not going to have the shooting and spacing, so you're going to have to kind of piece the offense together, and that's obviously score the ball is pretty reductive as a swing piece, but that's where they're at. They're going to be good defensively. They're going to be good on the break. It's when it gets down to grind time, can they get the ball in the net?
All right, for all three of you, we have less than a minute left in the first segment. We're going to go another segment. We'll go to the rest of the NBA. I'm talking to Masai Ujiri at just past 6 p.m. Eastern time. Can you do my job for me? What's the one, if you want to raise your finger, what's the one question I need to ask Ujiri past 6 p.m. Eastern?
What is your former co-host? Oh, go for it.
Oh, sorry, buddy. Dave, you're the guest, man. You go first.
Oh, no,
I can talk to Timmy anytime.
Is your former co-host right? Is Sid right? Did they make a move for Ben Simmons? That's what I want to hear him answer.
Mikey?
That's a good one. I would like to know a little big picture. Like, what is the plan? And, we're just 2 years away. The Raptors are just 2 years away from a title. And, that path, who's lighting that path back to being a contending team, and what steps do they need to take to be there?
How does he feel Dan Tolzman did stuck in the 905 with those post-camp Exhibit 10 deals?
I love it. Blake Murphy. All right, we'll take the quick break. We'll come back with more of the basketball conversation. Are the Lakers too old to win a title? Is Trae Young good value at plus 2,000 to win the MVP? More roundtable basketball talk opening night right here on Tim and Friends. And maybe if Sid's right about Ben Simmons. Welcome back. Masai Ujiri coming up at the top of the hour. The roundtable's too sweet to be sour. Assembled Murphy in studio. McMenamin across the street from Staples in LA. Grange at home. Let's expand the viewpoint, gents, beyond our home and native land. Starting with MC10. I'll get this right this time. Dave, the Lakers are the odds-on favorite to win the NBA title. Should they be?
MC Caliph, no, they shouldn't be. The Brooklyn Nets should be, because we're talking about a team that doesn't have Kyrie Irving with them right now. and still, in my mind, are the favorites to win the championship. And if at some point they get Kyrie, and it's a long NBA season, 82 games long, there's plenty of time for him to change his mind and come back to the fold, because what is inhibiting him right now is not a similar issue with Ben Simmons. He doesn't have a problem with the Nets. He doesn't have a problem with the NBA, with his teammates. He's trying to make some overarching statement about mandates, which I don't think we have enough time on this program to really get into and try to understand. But he still likes playing basketball with Kevin Durant and James Harden. If you can have those three guys on the court healthy for a 2-month playoff run, they should absolutely be the NBA champions. And so the Lakers are looking up at them, if not other teams as well. I would certainly put the defending champ Milwaukee Bucks above the Lakers in terms of contention right now. 11 new players we're talking about the Lakers trying to integrate. That's a lot. And then, of course, you have the age factor. Mike, agree or disagree?
I'm not a big Lakers guy right now. I think they're really old. I thought that, I just see them as being too vulnerable. And you look at championship teams, they're way deeper than we typically think. And as much as the Lakers have depth and superstar, I'm not sure that they're the kind of superstars that necessarily work together. I love, look, I'm still a believer in LeBron James, but, there's a lot of how this team, constructed as they are, can win an NBA title against the level of competition that's out there. So no, I'm selling on Lakers.
You got a little digitized in the mix of all that, but I think we all realize that you're not high on the Lakers. Blake, were you? Who is it? Like, to me, the Nets are just the big three of the Nets are just a myth. I've never seen them before. How many games have they played together?
Not a lot, and that's an issue. And I think the Kyrie absence also introduces a little bit more risk for them, where Durant and Harden, if they're together, they're going to be awesome. They have a really well-built depth around them, pieces that fit. The front office has done a great job. But if Kyrie Irving is not in the mix, you have way less insulation against a Kevin Durant injury or a James Harden injury. The Lakers aren't the team that I would put ahead of them necessarily. Now, as much as I'll warn, I fancy myself a good defender. I've played against Grange before, so I can attest that old guys can still get buckets. So I wouldn't count the Lakers out entirely. But I think the West is tough. The Suns made a nice run last year and should be a little bit better. The Nuggets, if Jamal Murray comes back to any reasonable form of Jamal Murray, should be right in the mix too. You've got a couple other teams as you go down the West. I don't know that it's going to be an easy path for the Lakers. I think I'd have the Nets at the top, but I think this is, like last year, a year where you could make a good case for 4 or 5 different teams.
Dave, I want to zero in on Kyrie for a second, and if I'm not mistaken, you covered him in Cleveland. Did you guys, your time intersect in Cleveland? Like, I think we see human beings way too often in 21 as one-dimensional. And good people can do terrible things, and terrible people can do good things. Like, I feel like Kyrie does all these great things that people see once in a while, and he's also a massive pain in the ass. Like, where is the truth in Kyrie Irving?
Well, I think you can look to the efforts that he's done, charitable efforts, and certainly applaud them. For instance, the WNBA, when their league was losing the season because of the coronavirus pandemic, he was donating salary to help people pay their bills in the WNBA. That said, when he had his Instagram live the other day that explained his position on why he's not with the Nets right now, he did it right smack dab in the middle of the WNBA finals game. And if you want to, prop up that league, celebrate that sport, maybe not be a distraction to that. That's a major event when it comes to the WNBA calendar. And so you can kind of point to these hypocrisies. And it's not just that. Obviously, he is someone that considered himself a master of the craft of basketball, and he certainly is. But I think the true masters, the people he look up to, someone like a Kobe Bryant, he was never cutting corners. He wasn't missing practice. He wasn't sacrificing any part of his prime in order to do anything but try to win and win big. Well, right now, Kyrie Irving has a chance to play on the best team in basketball, and he's nowhere to be seen.
Mike, you want to weigh in on this in any way?
You know what I want to weigh in on? I want to weigh in on Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this guy we are just months away removed from one of the all-time great finals performances from a guy who's just 26 years old, who's maybe the most inspiring story that realistically we have seen in the NBA when we really take it in its totality. And I still think he's found a new gear. When you look at how he performed those finals, look how he performed in that 7th game, the free throws he made under the ultimate pressure. And I think I don't think we should be talking about Kyrie Irving. We'll talk about Kyrie Irving if and when he ever shows up. But right now, I think, the Bucks, and we know it here in Toronto, what it's like to be a champion that isn't getting its proper respect or due. And I think that's what we should be focusing on, because that's a better story and a more important one for the league ultimately.
It's interesting, too, because I was looking at MVPs, and I mentioned before we went to break, Trae Young seems to have a little value at plus 2,000. Blake, who's the guy? I mean, I think Giannis is probably the favorite in my mind, given the roster, given the numbers that he puts up. But is there someone in the mix that we're not talking about that might be ready to take that next step? And it's okay, because I saw you nodding when I said Trae Young earlier.
Yeah, no, Trae Young's an interesting one, especially if you're trying to maximize your value on these, right? Like, there's not... Plus 400 isn't bad, but that's not... You have to leave money in the account all year for 4-1. It's not that fun to bet on Luka Doncic, even if you think he's going to win it. So I tend to go a little further down the board. Yeah. I like the Trae Young play. I like the Nikola Jokic repeat play, just because he said today I couldn't care less about it. And I like that approach to it and that attitude to it. But, with these things, I kind of think Giannis should be the favorite until there's a drop-off there. Like, he's just... There's a case that he's not maybe the 1A best player in the league, but it's a hard case to make given what we've seen the last couple of years. And now that the kind of narrative fatigue of Giannis's dominance is gone, I can see him right back in the mix.
All right, I'm asking a hard question, and all I want is a champion from all three of you. And I know that predictions suck because there's a couple of variables, but I'm still going to do it anyway. Blake, who's your champion this year?
Brooklyn Nets.
Michael.
The Bucks. Giannis has found that next championship superstar gear, and we haven't seen the best of them yet.
McMenamin, your champ.
We're going with the Nets, and we're also going with Kevin Durant for MVP.
Wow. All right. I might have to bet the Nets guys in the room. I wonder what I'll get on the other side. Either way, I appreciate you boys doing this. Thank you very much, McMenamin, Grange, Murphy. All right, there are the boys assembled on the round table. We never know what to do when I say goodbye. Like, do you jump in and say, thanks, Tim, but I'm in a rush, and I feel like a bad host either way. We're going to talk to Masai Ujiri next. We're talking to the president of basketball operations, Toronto Raptors, get you caught up to date on everything on Tim and Frank.